Hey guys, and welcome back. Today we're going to be discussing what might be some of the better value bets against the spread in college basketball for January 8th, 2017. Got about 7 games that we're going to cover in this video as potentially being some of the better bets for today's action. If you're looking for more picks beyond just what we talk about in this video, you can head on over to stumpthespread.com by clicking this logo in the top right hand corner, and over there you can get our daily free play as well as our premium picks across all major American sports. And if you want, you can click that thumbs up or subscribe, and it's greatly appreciated and really helps us out if you can do that. So heading right into this video, first game I want to talk about is Richmond against George Washington. The Richmond Spiders have put together some nice results this season, or at least in conference play. Richmond now stands 8-6 overall and 2-0 in the A10. Richmond came through in their conference opener on the road against Davidson, pulling out that win by a final of 82-80, and then they followed that result up with a 80-72 win over Fordham in their last outing at home. The Spiders don't mind playing in the half court, and this group currently ranks 202nd in the nation in scoring average and 161st in total defense. Richmond is picked to finish more in the mid-tier of the A10 this season, and the Spiders have been led by TJ Klein, who's averaging 17.9 points per game. George Washington has had to fight through some injuries this season, but the Colonials are good to go now. They've had a guy like Watanabe is back in the lineup, and with him back in there, he can really give this team a boost on both ends of the court. As of right now, George Washington stands 9-6 overall and 1-1 in conference play. George Washington picked up a nice win the other day at home against Davidson by a final of 73-69. The Colonials are a tough team to beat at home, and they probably won't fall very often at home throughout conference play in the A10. The Colonials like to play off their defense, as this group ranks 98th in the nation in points allowed compared to 276 in scoring average. George Washington has become more of a threat with Watanabe back in the lineup, and this group has been led by big man Tyler Cavanaugh, who's averaging 16.5 points per game. George Washington brings a solid home court advantage to the table, and the Colonials aren't likely to lose much at home this year or through the rest of the campaign. We're not all that high on this Spiders squad, but to Richmond's credit, they've gotten off to a solid start in conference play. With that said, we like George Washington to come through at home as they go on to win and cover this manageable spread. All right, moving on to the next game we want to talk about here is going to be Wisconsin against Purdue. The Wisconsin Badgers have been strong so far this season, standing 13-2 overall and 2-0 in the Big Ten, with their only defeats coming away from home against really talented teams Creighton and North Carolina. Wisconsin has opened conference play, beating Rutgers at home, followed by an excellent 75-68 win on the road against Indiana. This is a veteran Badgers squad that has shown the ability to play with composure in tough road environments, but today won't be easy going on the road against one of the top teams in the conference. Wisconsin plays off of their defense as the Badgers rank 8th in the nation in points allowed, as well as 108th in scoring average. Bronson Koenig leads this balanced offensive attack, averaging 14.3 points per game. And Purdue is another squad that should be able, or at least has the pieces to make a push for the Big Ten regular season title. Purdue has been solid so far this season, standing 13-3 overall and 2-1 in conference. Purdue has shown to be more of an offensive threat this season, ranking 24th in the nation in scoring average, as well as a respectable 62nd in total defense. In their last outing, Purdue came through on the road against Ohio State, beating the Buckeyes by a final of 76-75. In their last home contest, the Boilermakers surprisingly fell to Minnesota by a final of 82-91. Caleb Swanigan leads this potent attack, averaging 18.3 points per game. This is a much-watched today if you're a fan of college basketball. Two of the top teams in the Big Ten going head-to-head in West Lafayette. Purdue came up short in their last outing at home, but that likely won't be the case much more this season as the Boilermakers try to put together a Big Ten title run. Behind their really strong home court advantage, we do like Purdue to come through as they go on to win and cover this fairly small spread. All right, moving on here. The next game that we want to talk about is going to be Northwestern against Nebraska. Another Big Ten matchup that we got here. The Northwestern Wildcats have gotten off to an ideal starting, or not their ideal starting conference play, standing 1-2 overall, coming off back-to-back losses against Michigan State and Minnesota. Northwestern came up short in their last outing at home against the Golden Gophers, losing to Minnesota by a final of 66-70, and really is what the kind of game that Northwestern needs to win if they're going to make a run towards the NCAA tournament this season. The Wildcats need to take advantage of their home games because there aren't many free wins on the road in the Big Ten, and the Wildcats, so far on the year, like to play in the half court, ranking 41st in the nation in total defense compared to 146th in scoring average. Northwestern has been led by Scotty Lindsey, who's averaging 15.4 points per game. Nebraska has been one of the hottest teams in the Big Ten to start conference play, standing 3-0 in the Big Ten, coming off wins against teams like Indiana, Maryland, and Iowa, with the first two of those coming on the road in really impressive fashion. In their last outing, Nebraska was able to come through behind their home court advantage, beating the Hawkeyes by a final of 93-90. With their reformed lineup, Nebraska has been a work in progress this season, but this group is starting to play with a lot more purpose and confidence since the start of conference play. Nebraska has shown the ability to play up to the level of their competition consistently this season, and the Huskers look like they're headed back in the right direction as a program. Veteran Ty Webster has really stepped up this year, especially on the offensive side of the ball, where he leads the team, averaging 17.7 points per game. Nebraska has a great home court advantage that they should use today as they try and pick up their fourth straight win in conference. Northwestern is starting to need to get some wins to kind of even out their resume and get their RPI back up after coming off some defeats recently, but it won't be easy on the road here. We do like Nebraska to come through as they go on to cover this spread. Moving on here to an interesting match that we have in the Missouri Valley Conference between Wichita State and Northern Iowa. Wichita State is a clear-cut favorite to win the Missouri Valley Conference this year, especially with how they've opened conference play, now standing 13-3 overall and 3-0 in league action. Wichita State has been impressive on both sides of the ball this season, ranking around 30th in the nation in both scoring average and total defense. Wichita State is the only team that has a legitimate shot at getting an at-large bid to the Big Dance out of this conference. And to do this, Shockers need to consistently handle their business in the Missouri Valley Conference. Not a whole lot of room for error for them in this conference, because if they start racking up any sort of conference defeats, that's really going to be a negative hit on their RPI. In their last outing, the Shockers came through against Drake at home, picking up the win by a final of 90-65. Wichita State brings a balanced offensive attack with 9 players averaging between 4 to 13 points per game, and this is one of the deeper teams and more talented teams in the Missouri Valley Conference overall. Northern Iowa has been the biggest disappointment in the MVC so far this season, as the Panthers stand just 5-9 overall and 0-3 in league play. Northern Iowa's struggles have stemmed from their poor offensive production, as the Panthers rank 333rd in the nation in scoring average compared to a more respectable 71st in total defense. Northern Iowa was picked to finish 3rd in the MVC, but that doesn't appear like an accomplishable placing for this squad anymore at this point in the year. In their last outing, Northern Iowa came up short on the road against Loyola Chicago, losing by a final of 66-77. Northern Iowa leans heavily on Jeremy Morgan, who's leading the team, averaging 16.7 points per game. Wichita State has motivation coming into every MVC matchup, knowing that they don't have a whole lot of margin for error if they want to keep their RPI high. Northern Iowa has been awful offensively this season, and we don't see that changing today against the top defense in the conference. Take Wichita State to come through on the road as they go on to win and cover this spread. Moving on down the list here, the next game that we want to talk about is going to be the Ohio State versus Minnesota matchup. This should be another pretty interesting matchup today in the Big Ten. Ohio State is better than their 10-5 overall record might suggest, but Ohio State has simply just come up barely short at the end of a number of tough contests this year. In their last outing, Ohio State had Purdue on the ropes at home, but Ohio State came up just short in the end, losing to the Boilermakers by a final of 75-76. Ohio State builds off of their defensive effort, as the Buckeyes rank 42nd in the nation in points allowed compared to 164th in scoring average. The Buckeyes have played to the level of their competition this season and have shown they can compete tough on the road against really strong competition. The Buckeyes have 5 players averaging in double figures, with Jayshawn Tate leading the way, and he's averaging 14.1 points per contest. Minnesota has been one of the surprise teams in the Big Ten, standing 14-2 overall and 2-1 in conference play. Although Minnesota has been more competitive than expected, part of the reason the Gophers have had so much success is because of the relatively easier schedule they've faced this season. Minnesota is coming off back-to-back elite resume wins on the road against Purdue and Northwestern, and it'll be interesting to see how the Gophers follow that result up here. In their last home outing, the Gophers fell to Michigan State, and that was back to open up Big Ten conference play. Minnesota doesn't mind playing a bit faster pace than most Big Ten squads, and the Gophers currently rank 112th in the nation scoring average and 72nd in total defense. Minnesota also brings a balanced offensive attack, and veteran Nate Mason has led the offense, averaging 14.5 points per game. Ohio State has the athletes to compete with Minnesota, and the Buckeyes have proven they can perform in tough road atmospheres this season, nearly winning at teams like Virginia and Illinois in games where they came up just short in the end. We like the Buckeyes to push the Gophers and to keep things competitive as they go on to cover this moderate spread. All right, just a couple more games that we want to touch on in this video, starting with Cal versus Southern Cal. We're not all that high on this Cal squad, given their deficiencies on the offensive side of the ball. So far this year, Cal stands 10-5 overall and 1-2 in the Pac-12. Cal lost some of their key contributors from last year's squad, but this group remains a threat, ranking 20th in the nation in total defense compared to 248th in scoring average. Cal was able to keep things respectable in their last outing on the road against UCLA, losing by 10 points in a contest that looked like it was going to get out of hand by halftime. Cal's in need of some resume-building wins, but it won't be easy here on the road against an often overlooked Trojan squad. Cal has been led by big man Ivan Rabb, who stepped up in his sophomore campaign, averaging 15.3 points per game. The USC Trojans haven't gone against the toughest schedule in comparison to other Pac-12 teams so far this season, but the Trojans have been taking care of business consistently, standing 15-1 overall and 2-1 in conference play. In their last outing, USC came through for us at home, beating back Stanford by a final of 72-56. USC remains undefeated at home so far this season, and the Trojans have been really showing some strengths on both sides of the ball, ranking 53rd in the nation in scoring average and 130th in total defense. The Trojans have been great with their offensive depth, as they have 5 players averaging in double figures, and Elijah Stewart has led the team overall, averaging 15.3 points or 14.3 points per game. Cal's to go back-to-back on the road, which is always a challenge in the Pac-12, and the Golden Bears will try to stay competitive here, leaning on their defense, but the Trojans have shown the ability to put up some great offensive numbers this season. We like USC to come through on their home court as they go on to win and cover this manageable spread here against the Cal Golden Bears. All right, guys, just one more game that I want to touch on in this video, and that's going to be the Marist versus Monmouth matchup, and that's going to wrap things up for us when I'm done with that, talking about this particular matchup. The Marist Red Fox aren't going to challenge for the MAAC title this year, but they have been decent in conference play thus far, staying 2-3 overall in league play. Marist broke out of their losing streak, recently taking down Manhattan at home by a final of 90-88, but the Red Foxes fell short in their last outing, losing to Rider by a final of 62-73. Marist has been competitive this far in conference, but this will be a tough challenge for them on the road, taking on the best team in the conference. Marist ranks just 270th in the nation in scoring average, but this unit has been led by Khalid Hart, who's averaging 16.1 points per contest. We've been pretty high on this Monmouth squad so far this year. They came through for us the other day at home against Iona, picking up the win by a final of 92-74. But Monmouth hasn't been nearly as consistently dominant as we were expecting to see this season. And the Hawks are just recently coming off of a 3-game losing streak with recent conference losses, coming against Rider at home and then St. Peter's on the road. Monmouth has been beatable on the defensive end, but this group is still one of the top offensive units in the MAAC, averaging 80.1 points per game. Justin Robinson leads this group, averaging 17.7 points per game, but he has taken a step back from the numbers that he was putting up last year. Monmouth hasn't proven to be the consistent dominating threat that we saw out of them last season, and this is a lot of points for this group to lay today at home. Marist has been competitive throughout MAAC play thus far, even with picking up 2 conference wins. We feel like Marist getting this many points is going to be the better value bet in this particular matchup. As we can see, this one started at Monmouth being 16-point favorites. It has gone up to 16.5 in that 17 range. And, you know, just given the fact that we haven't seen that much consistency out of Monmouth this year, we do feel like Marist getting the points here is going to be the better betting value in this particular matchup. So that wraps up the contest that we want to talk about for today's action. Again, if you're interested in more pick content, you can head on over to stumpthespread.com by clicking this link here in the top right-hand corner on the logo, or you can also get to Stump the Spread through the video description. That's going to wrap up for what we want to cover in this particular video. You can click that subscribe button to get more pick video content in the future. And also, we just released our pick for the college football national title game. So if you head on over to our channel, you can get access to that. So thanks guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.